One, two,
Standing
go.
by. You know.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to and potentially watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or as we said, possibly stream in. We are joining you on February 20th, 2025, and this particular episode, we're going to be talking about Captain America Brave New World, the, get this, 35th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe series of movies.
It
And
just seems wild to
the-
me.
That's not counting the TV shows.
Yeah.
All the shows, all the
Yeah.
tie-ins, the seasons of those individual shows.
Yeah.
Anything that's been remade canon, just because.
Mhm.
35 movies
35.
since Iron Man.
Hey, do y'all remember the before times when we all sat around and said, "Oh, someday they'll make movies about superhero comic books," and we'll
Uh-huh.
have that. Yeah, remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's
You want to know how many comic books movies there were when I was a preteen?
So Superman 1 and 2.
Mhm.
They had the whole TV show that
Not
you
talking
were
TV.
okay.
Oh,
Yes.
what about that Doctor Strange movie?
That's TV.
Oh, that's TV.
was it
Yeah.
just Superman 1 and 2?
It's just Superman 1 and 2. If you want to extend it, there were the two EC Comics movies that came out in Britain.
Yeah.
Right.
Batman 66 was before I was born. So, yeah. When people complain, I'm like, fuck you 5 times over. I had nothing growing up. I had
Well,
nothing.
even up until when I was
stuff.
a kid in the 90s, right? I mean, you had some, but not a ton.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a phenomenon the way it is now. And they definitely didn't have the respect and the budget that they did.
Yeah. I mean, you had a little
other
more
than-
with Batman and the Rocketeer and a
Yeah.
few others. Yeah. And then,
Yeah, that was. I mean, there were some, but it was very limited, and the appeal was just sort of like, okay, well, if it's not Batman or Superman, it's probably not going to do great. I mean, Dick Tracy was a big deal promotion wise, but didn't really make a huge
yeah.
impact at the box office, even with Madonna and
But I don't consider that's a comic strip. I don't
Yeah.
consider
comic
Well,
strip. Yeah, but
that's an interesting point too, because that while there weren't particularly superhero comic book movies, there were a lot of pulp,
Yeah.
fiction movies. You
It
had
was-
all the Tarzans and
I mean, Tarzan,
yeah,
was a
the
film franchise
Phantom,
for ages,
Yeah.
but there were shadows here and there. Doc
Mhm.
Savage in
Saint.
75. The what?
wasn't the Saint originally a comic?
No, the Saint was a TV creation, and
Not
there
that
was-
one. When did Eisner's Saint come out?
You talking the Spirit?
Spirit.
Spirit, dang it, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, Spirit, because there was a Spirit film.
Yeah, but it was a TV film, like 87, 88, around then.
Okay,
Like the Saint, Jesus.
So I like this little impromptu road trip down cinema history that we decided to go
Shadow.
on as an opener.
yeah, we've got some people joining us.
Oh, cool.
We've got Victor Rose as well, giving us a smiley
Hey,
face. Hello,
Victor
Victor.
Rose.
And then Daniel Williamson, the Shadow had a movie
Hey.
in the '90s, also. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which started as a it's
Billy Zane.
debatable what it is, because there was appearances of the Shadow and Pulp magazines before the radio series, but the in the early radio series, which like those don't exist anymore. And in the original pulps, he's like a narrator. There is no Lamont Cranston. There is no ongoing themes.
Mm-hmm.
So what you know is the Shadow is more radio than pulp, though the character did originally appear in pulp books, but more as a narrator and not as a character himself.
Right.
Tarzan's a pulp character.
Sure.
Hey, Omar. I'm glad you made
We've
it.
got Omar
Yeah,
joining us. Hey, Omar.
Yeah.
And we've got James Figueredo. Good
Hey,
evening.
James.
Hello.
Good evening, James.
Buck Rogers is a pulp character. He started in the
Yeah.
pulps. Doc Savage.
Mm-hmm.
Zorro. Zorro is a pulp character.
Kind of the ultimate pulp character in a way.
Yeah.
And then you had Conan, and that's
Conan was pulp.
and I think in a lot of ways Conan is a in the same way that Buck Rogers and all those are superhero stories. I feel like it has that same kind of genetic makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Buck Rogers, his real claim to fame was the comic strip series, which debuted after, and also debuted the same day as Tarzan, which had a very long running.
I did not know that
comic strip series, and the art on the Tarzan, like Hogarth and Russ Manning. I mean, this gorgeous art on those Tarzan strips over time. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of, there were actually probably a lot more comic strip movies, like in the 60s, 50s, 60s. I mean, Blondie, wasn't there like a series of Blondie movies
in the 40s into the 50s? Yeah.
Yeah. So, there was some of that. Prince Valiant, which
really
did have a movie that
Brenda
was
Starr
not that long ago.
Brenda Starr.
Gasoline
Alley.
Somebody was looking for a copy of Brenda Starr recently. I saw their post.
Dondi.
Why? What? Dondi? Yes.
Which is, that is a very strong comic book connection in that that was drawn by Erwin Hasen, who created Wildcat series. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
Wow, this is a weird
Daniel.
I love it. I love these kind of
Daniel, of course, saying Flash Gordon
started as a comic strip. Yeah.
Yeah. Victor also mentions, like, since we're not counting TV, but Saturday morning cartoons, live action. You got Shazam, you got Isis, you got Super Friends, you got all the good stuff. That's where. Are
we going to talk again about Super Friends changing my life?
Yeah.
James, we already talked about the Phantom movie, so you're late to the party on that one.
Also, if we ever get to meet Vic and he doesn't actually have Saturnailian horns, I'm going to be upset. For those of you who are listening, our friend Vic, who pops up every once in a while, his icon is pretty cool drawing, but it's him as some type of satyr, and so I think it's a great drawing. But if I ever meet him and he doesn't have horns, it's going to be very, very disappointing to me. I need you to come through with the horns, buddy.
It's also giving a little bit of Marco from Saga. So.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we have an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast where we discuss a recent film, what we do is we discuss the recent film, how we felt about it, and what our reactions to it. But then afterwards, we each have a recommendation of a past comic, whether it's a single issue or an extended arc, that features characters from the film that we think people who are viewing this might enjoy. So some of my favorite episodes have been those episodes, particularly the Deadpool and the Captain Marvel. I love those episodes. I absolutely love those episodes because none of us were really like passionate Deadpool fans, but when we got into it, we were like, oh my God, I didn't know about that. I got to read that. That one was probably the most exciting one of the episodes we've had in this format. And let's see how this goes. So Steve, you're very good at encapsulating films. So why don't you take us through Captain America: Brave New World, which is directed by Julius Ona and stars Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, who is now Captain America, Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross, and a bunch of other. And I have to correct myself because they don't refer to him as Thunderbolt Ross in the film. So I have to correct myself.
They do somebody does bring up his nickname of Thunderbolt, like 2/3 of the way through the movie, and you're like, okay, cool. But yeah, I mean, it stars a bunch of people, and it also doesn't star a bunch of other people that were originally slated to star, but unfortunately
Mhm.
got dumped on the cutting room floor. But generally, what we have in the final plot, that's gone through so many iterations over the past several years since it's been announced, is Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, is sent out on a mission very early on after Ross is basically is elected president. He sends out Captain America and Falcon to go and retrieve a sample of some interesting material that has been mined by the Japanese on what is now called Celestial Island. If you remember the Eternals, we have this giant celestial that's frozen, in the middle of the Indian Ocean. But the sample of whatever's been mined has been stolen by Serpent, aka the Serpent Society. And Sam has to go and retrieve it. Cap, of course, does. Makes another enemy of Sidewinder of the Serpent Society, but returns it back to the United States, where it's going to be handed over back to the Japanese, but also as part of a new treaty that's being formed between the U.S., France, India, and Japan on how to handle Celestial Island, but also what's come out of Celestial Island. He goes to the White House along with the 1950s Captain America, and they see the wonderful presentation. The new material that they found is adamantium, big thing. And that's when the 1950s Captain America, Elijah, gets up out of his seat and attempts to assassinate the president. This kicks off a crazy espionage tinged search where Cap is trying to figure out a way to clear his friend Elijah's name, but also find out who's behind the assassination attempt, who controlled Elijah to try and kill the president. And in doing so, he uncovers a character who hasn't been seen in almost 16 years, who happens to be behind the entire thing and has been pulling the strings, not just for what's going on around this treaty, but also of the new president, President Ross himself. And it's a very explosive, very bright red effect. Towards the end of the film, we get to see the result of that. So not going to spoil too much right away. I just kind of want to talk about how we felt about it, who showed up that we were really excited to see, and how we thought the plots went, because there were several different plot threads that we're trying to keep together. But I don't know, Caleb, Bill, who wants to go first? How'd you feel about this movie?
Caleb can go first.
So, it's hard to say, right? So I'm trying to put this in. There were parts about this film that I thought I was really intrigued by. I'm glad that they put in there. There were parts of it that I didn't think worked very well. It kind of middle of the road on it. For me, the movie was fine, right? Like it was a good. We saw it on Valentine's Day night. So, and we actually had our nieces, two of our nieces with us. They came up to spend the weekend. They were dog sitting with us because we had to go out of town, so we had to pick them up the night before. So we got to spend Valentine's Day with our nieces. We took them to the movies. We had a really good time. I think that the movie overall was very predictable. There were plot points that were supposed to be, twists, that it was just the most shoehorned by the numbers thing. It just didn't work well. But the characters were cool. I thought the actors, for the most part, did a really good job. I don't have a lot of complaints with the acting in the film. Some of these characters been waiting for years to see them depicted the way that they were on screen. So the comic book nerd in me was kind of just really geeking out, and especially the Hulk fan in me that I am was really having fun with it. Overall, and so I kind of put it this way, right? It was a fun popcorn movie. Will I ever go back and watch it again? Maybe, because there's some characters in there, but if it weren't for my ties to those characters, probably not. It's not going to go in my pantheon of the greatest movies ever made, but it was a fun time. It didn't make me think very much, right? So if you watch some of my favorite superhero movies, or even some of them that aren't very good, right? But Wonder Woman 84 is a good example. Not a great movie, kind of hodgepodge together, filmed by committee. but there was some stuff in there that made you
I
think.
disagree with that.
It didn't. I mean, I liked it because it made me
think
think.
Wonder Woman 84 would have been a better film if it was filmed by committee. I thought her vision was just too chaotic, but I do think it's her vision. That I will disagree with you on it.
See, I just read that there was some other stuff that the studio did that was to tie into other things.
I didn't feel that way hijacked.
So maybe not. I don't know. But I didn't. I feel like there were a lot of good things there. But the movie made me think, right? And it got into capitalism and the history of things like trickle down economics and stuff like that. It had all these under elements in it. This movie didn't have a lot of subtext. And I think there was a lot of subtext to be had there, especially, I mean, there were some things that I think they were trying to go with subtext that it was just text, and so that's some of the obvious things as far as a black man filling Captain America's shoes, so to speak, or just being that icon. But other than that, there was not a lot of deeper layer stuff that I think that there could have been when you're talking about a movie that's about the subject matter, where you're talking about kind of the ways that it's weirdly playing into our culture at the time that we are in now with mind games and people being hijacked, because of technology and, but there just wasn't, I don't know. They just kind of laid it all out there like, hey, here's kind of what it is. Now let's build some, a political intrigue around it and go with it. They could have taken some of the narrative tricks that they did in the second Captain America film that I thought were done better and played with that too. But I mean, that's a whole different set of people behind the wheels. So I don't know, had a good time.
I completely agree with you about it being a popcorn film. I did enjoy it. I don't want to come away with saying I didn't enjoy it. And going with some of the things that you said, Steve, I did think that this was definitely Mackey's best performance as Sam Wilson. He had some really nice moments that I don't think he's ever been. He never had the playing room to do before. So I thought that was really nice. It's hard seeing an old Harrison Ford.
It is.
It really is because he seems, up here he's still, such a vibrant personality, and so there were moments where it was, we all get older, but damn it, I thought he was going to be one of them that, that was an exception to that rule. Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, I thought he was a really interesting sidekick.
Yeah.
There wasn't a move that he made that was out of context with the film. I really did enjoy that. But, I think you hit on a lot of points that I think are worth bringing up, Caleb, about just the conceit of Captain America. And that this is a character, no matter who is in the role of Captain America, whether it's Sam or whether it's Bucky or whether it's, others, that it is somebody whose allegiance is to the flag and not to the office. And some of the best Captain America stories, that's intrinsic to the storylines and intrinsic to the character. And I think this was a missed opportunity to explore that, particularly with a Black Captain America as a commentary on race, which is so needed right now, as far as I'm concerned. From my perception, like this really could have been, just given the timing of this, fucked up time in our country, to have that character with something that had a bit more meat on the bone than, a traditional adventure romp, there was nothing wrong with the film. I will say, it is the closest to, I think, a Marvel film by committee since Thor: The Dark World. It just had some moments, and if you see the writing credits, I mean, there's 5 credited writers, and apparently there were like 9 uncredited. After it went through arbitration with the Writers Guild, and the focus of the film took twists and turns at various points. But I did enjoy it as a popcorn film. It's nothing that I think is consequential in the film. And a lot of Marvel movies have that feeling, even if it's just as the bridge to something else. So, you know, like contextually, I think it was a missed opportunity, but, you know, that's not the film we're talking about. We're talking about something else.
Sure.
It's just that the time that this is hitting, it's a missed opportunity, but who really could have known it was going to be a missed opportunity?
And it got made so long
years ago. Yeah.
One thing I did want to point out though, and to give credit where credit's due, one thing I did think this was, you know, when was the last canonical Marvel movie? What was that?
I'm trying to understand what you mean by canonical.
Oh, well, just in the last series. So you said this was the 35th movie. What was the 30?
A Deadpool versus Wolverine.
Okay, so that one. So, but as far as like the overarching Marvel films that, you know, started off from Iron Man through the Avengers and the kind of phases and stuff like that, you know, I'm not sure. It's been a little bit since I've really tapped into that world, right? And I thought this did a good job about reminding you of just the universe spanning stuff, because they mentioned the blip, they mentioned the 5 years. They actually, I mean, one of the criticisms I heard from people are like, "Hey, did we forget that there's a giant celestial in the middle of the Indian Ocean?" Like they went back there and touched on that, right? They reminded you of the breadth of this universe. And in a lot of ways, while I think there was an important story being told here, I think there was fun, and it plays into the overarching role, and it gives us some amazing. I mean, for me, this was a great villain too. But I think it really did a really good job of reminding you of the scope of the overall universe without bringing every single character to do a cameo, right? Because there was only one kind of big cameo in this. But I thought they did a really good job reminding you, hey, this remember everything that's happened here. For those of you who aren't super nerds with, like, you know, action figures and books and, you know, buying all the Phase cool sets, but like, do y'all remember all of this stuff that happened? Because it's part and parcel of this. So I did think it was a really good job being kind of a focal point for that. But I get what you're saying, and I agree with you about the fact that it really, for a bridge movie, which in a lot of ways this is, it didn't feel like it had any overarching narrative weight to it, other than to really establish, hey, we've got a kind of a cool big bad. Let's kind of maybe forget about that road we went down with the blue guy that could time travel, and also we've got a black man wearing the stars and stripes. Which I think is a very, and we've got a Latino man filling the Falcons' shoes, and I just thought it was really there were some good things that it did. I don't want it to sound like I just was walking out of here.
When I talk about the missed opportunity, I did feel when given certain moments, like the introduction of Isaiah and the Falcon and Winter Soldier, I thought we were headed there.
I did too.
We were headed there a little bit. So it was, and I like I said, there's nothing wrong with the popcorn movie. There's absolutely nothing wrong, and some action scenes are really cool. But I think maybe it was my expectations that were misplaced, that there would have been more meat on the bone, especially with just the title Brave New World.
Yeah.
You know, it's and in terms of the villain, though, it was also nice to see in this film that the villain's point of view could be argued, it could be justified, and if you were in that person's shoes, what would you have done with the abilities that you have? And,
which gets back into the old Marvel formula, right? I mean, so some of the best
being
villains,
black and white,
some of the best villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe have been that way. That they've had that point, like Zemo, you know, an entire city got dropped on his family. I get it.
Yeah,
you know, you can understand it. Ultron spent I mean, it's turned into a meme now, but dude was hooked up to the World Wide Web for like 5 seconds. It's like, nope. Like, you know, he's just like, we got to eradicate this. But some of the best villains have been that, you know, I won't do the whole thing where you like make an argument for, you know, the internet validity of Thanos destroying half the universe. That's not there, but I mean, yeah, there's been other villains in the Marvel universe that I thought had very compelling anti-villain, or
at least
whatever that
Americans. I can think of a half that I'd be okay.
Well,
if they blipped away right now. Steve,
Well,
I
was gonna say, what about you, Steve?
What about you,
gave us
Steve? Don't be
you gave us the
sitting
plot.
chortling at the two of us talking. Let's
Yeah.
see what
So real quick, I just want to bring up what Daniel's question here. Were there any comic book cameo or comic book creator cameos this time, and or Stan Lee tributes? None that I could think of. Nothing that I noticed.
Yeah.
So, which could be something that sets us apart. I mean, we're past the Stan Lee cameo era.
Yeah.
You know, he's not around anymore, and they ran out of things that they filmed with him in it. So, yeah, I mean that's probably gone for now. But, so
we could get Roy Thomas cameos.
Yeah.
Okay, so my feel with this movie is kind of like how I feel when I think about Captain America comics. I approach them as, okay, these are part of the Marvel Universe. There's some stuff that's important in here. I don't vibe with it. It's not really my part of the Marvel Universe, but it's also not really kind of like I don't know, it's not part of my comic book genre that I really enjoy as much. They're usually a lot less cosmic. They're a lot more, you know, I guess grounded in reality, geopolitical reality of a sort. And this kind of was no different. And I think that's why it feels so weird, Caleb, when you're thinking back, like, well, what were the last ones? Well, the last mainstream MCU, not Deadpool and Wolverine, was the Marvels.
Yeah.
And the Marvels was cosmic. And before that, you had, you had Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. You had Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
Mm-hmm.
You had all these, like, Thor, Love and Thunder. You had these, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You had all these cosmic, universal, galactic, big thing, multiversal, jumping around realities, all these big impactful things. And we kind of forget that there are a whole bunch of Avengers that are kind of stuck on Earth, being normal people, more or less. Yes, with better access, weapons, and more capabilities than the general person, but they're not the ones blipping around, through the multiverse. They're not flying around on spaceships everywhere and firing laser guns, at gods. I mean, these are people who are kind of stuck dealing with the geopolitical reality of the country they live in or the world that they're stuck in. So, like this, and next in I think it's May's Thunderbolts, these are that people.
Yeah.
Like you've got Captain America and the Falcon. You've got the future Thunderbolts. They're kind of stuck in the real world. And when you go back to, say, Falcon the Winter Soldier, that 6-part series, you really kind of get to see a lot of the political side of
Mm-hmm.
these heroes. And, which also is kind of a problem for this movie. I think if you didn't watch that, you might be kind of lost with who some of these people are. Because there's a lot of, I guess, character development in that 6-part series, more with Sam, a little bit more with Bucky, who we'll talk about that cameo a little bit later. But also with Isaiah. I keep wanting to say Elijah, but Elijah was not in this movie. Spoiler. So the way I felt about this, I thought there was a lot of missed opportunity. Watching it, I could very much, and I saw this twice, so I went back and I saw it a second time. There are huge sections of the movie where you're just sort of like, did they just whole part take something out and stick something back in because they needed, like, oh, this isn't going to work now. We've got to completely redo the plot, so let's just throw this chunk in, completely refilmed or rewritten. You could see that, and it didn't tick me off, but it just made me curious as to what could have been, and would I have enjoyed it a lot more. It was fine as a movie. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough to see it twice. And I loved the characters. I really enjoy Sam Wilson as, both as the Falcon and as Captain America. Danny, what was his name? Is it Danny
Ramirez?
Who plays the Falcon. Love him. He's great. I wanted more of his wisecracks. Like, I really enjoyed him. I do kind of feel the same way, Bill, about Harrison Ford in this one, but I think he did a good job. You know, because
he was fine.
Replacement Ross.
It's just really hard when you grew up with him as such a heroic figure, and he still cuts that, you know, he still cuts that cloth, but it is hard. It is hard at points.
Yeah, and you know, and some of the side characters too, Shosha, and I know I'm probably mispronouncing her name, but Shosha Rockmore, as she's sort of like the head Secret Service person. President Ross's like right-hand woman. She's great. I really like the character. I wanted to see more.
I was lukewarm on her.
I like her, and I think that she probably had more of a role, you know, at some point. And there was a lot of this, just like you know, Ruth Bat-Saraf, that character, who of course we know as Sabra, and the actress who played her, Shara Haas, she had a much bigger role at some point, and it just kind of got mushed around, replaced, whatever. As for the villain, I am lukewarm about the leader. No problems, and no shade to Tim Blake Nelson who played him, but I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting a lot. You know, I was expecting more like mwahaha moments. He's found me. No, but I was expecting a little bit more over the top, but he really wasn't. And I think maybe because he was a little bit more humanized here, you know, he's more sympathetic of a character. You're kind of like, you know, yeah, he's really evil and he's doing these things that are going to hurt, you know, thousands, if not millions of people. But like, I guess he's got a point. You know, it just, to me, I was kind of on a lot of that. And I'm thinking what could have been, knowing how much ended up on the cutting room floor and what characters had been pressed.
In terms of the characterizations, though, I did think that they left Thaddeus Ross a little too much into Amanda Waller category, like stopping at anything. But but that's not even contemporaneous to the film. You don't see that version of the person.
Well,
and that was a little not the way I see that character from the comics.
One of the things that didn't work for me, and I enjoy the character of Thaddeus Ross. You know, again, longtime Hulk fan, you kind of you have to understand who that person is. But we haven't really had enough to. So much of this movie hinged on them convincing me that this character that I had really, you know, only seen with a different actor from a bunch of movies ago, but that this character has changed from who he is. Like, and as a Hulk fan, I know that, but I was talking to the hubs and the nieces, and I was like, you know, did the whole I was a bad person and now I've changed, and that's how I got to the president. I'm going to work together, and I'm going to flip over to the bad person again. We haven't spent enough time with that character for that to matter, right? Like the change didn't work for me because you did not like you have not allowed me to spend enough time to get to know how bad he was to really understand the fact that he has changed. That all happens just very quickly in the movie, and I like that. To me, so much of the story hinged on that emotional connection to him that wasn't there, and I don't know, that part just didn't work for me.
Yeah, and we're getting into the spoiler. You know, into spoiler category, is spoiler territory here, I should say. So just be warned if you haven't seen the movie. But some of the decisions there and the focus that was put on General Ross, you really have to have seen the Ed Norton Incredible Hulk movie from 2009. 2009. Yeah, from 2009.
2008.
You had to.
Yes, I was going to say it's the third movie, and Iron Man was 06, right?
No, Iron Man was 08. And then Incredible Hulk was the second.
Iron Man was a little bit before. It wasn't contemporaneous. Iron Man was. You're right. Iron Man was 08. Look at that.
I know my dates, sort of.
Okay, there you
go. I'll get 10 more things wrong. Never mind.
You know, it definitely came first.
Yeah. So Iron Man was first, and then Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2. But you know, so with this, I you know, you had to have seen that. You had to have seen the Eternals. You had to have seen Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Did you really have to have seen the Eternals? I mean, I thought they explained that really well that, because anything that happened in the Eternals film didn't mean shit to this.
Well, yeah, but you have to understand, like, how does
would
Tiamat
disagree
come
with
out of
that.
any, like, where did this thing come from?
But they explain it. They
because-
explain it very early in the film. This thing's there.
No, it's just there. Well, it was ignored completely, except for one throwaway line in the She-Hulk TV series where it was sort of like popped up as a news article. It's like, strange giant thing rises out of Indian Ocean. So like I think you do have to have.
I didn't think you
Eternals.
needed to see Eternals at all. And I can also
Falcon
say
Winter
I have
Soldier.
forgotten everything about the Incredible Hulk. And it was like it was coming back to me as I was watching this.
Well,
So,
yeah, and that was it was a
I
big.
do think
you know-
there's nuances to the Hulk that you would have missed.
Yeah.
But I think that's one area I think they actually did a pretty good job of covering the bases of, just providing key information and letting the story have its own propulsion.
I
don't
mean, you
agree
can
with
do
you
it.
on
They
that.
didn't have to go into all of that, but to really understand exactly like what's happening here, who these people, where these things came from, to really understand that,
Mhm.
you would have had to have seen or at least know the plot of some of these other films. And I think that's kind of a problem here, because this is really trying to be a bridge movie. We got to tie up all these loose ends, which, by the way, if you haven't seen this movie, you don't really know about. And we've got to really set up the future of, the real, like, Earth, for the next Marvel movies. And I don't know if they necessarily did a great job with that. So do we want to sort of talk about spoiler cameos and things that personally I had a bit of a problem with, that were definitely spoilery?
Sure. Go ahead,
Okay.
Steve. 'Cause you seem
So Betty Ross. So Betty Ross. The whole let's take care of Thaddeus Ross, aka Giant Red Hulk. We're going to defeat him, or at least calm him down by recalling his relationship with his daughter Betty. We barely got any Betty in here, and I know that there are probably many behind the scene factors why Liv Tyler couldn't be around more and why she couldn't make more of an appearance. But honestly, it seemed like it was almost shoehorned in. Like they almost had to force all these moments where he's like, yeah, I haven't talked to Betty for a while. Yeah, Betty hasn't called me, or I really miss Betty. And we used to walk around and see the cherry blossoms. I wonder if this will come up again.
All
Like,
well and good, but what role could she have played in this storyline?
I think they could have had her show up a lot more. They could have. I mean, because they made Ross such a central figure in this movie, it would make sense.
I don't see where she had an opening apart from the way she was used. I really don't see it.
She was barely used.
I mean, if she was at the reception with, "Hey, Betty," I mean, what could you?
She could have been at the reception. She could have been, she could have been whatever. Like there could have been multiple.
I don't see how that
there were
really
so many things cut out. There were so many things that were cut out of this movie that would have addressed many opportunities for Betty to come in, or at least a couple more opportunities.
I don't think
so. We didn't just have her in a brief phone call and a 2-second cameo at the end, which I thought was the first time I saw it. I thought it was CGI.
Can I throw something in here though? Because there's one thing that I think the point that actually is being illustrated really well is that in a lot of ways this comes off as a Thaddeus Ross movie. This isn't This isn't a Thunderbolt. This isn't a Red Hulk movie, right? This is a Sam Wilson Captain America movie, and because they were actually trying to get us to invest in understanding the Red Hulk and to set that character up to move forward and other things, they kind of let Thaddeus Ross hijack the movie and to get us to understand the Hulk and who the leader is and how Betty plays. All of that, honestly, if this had been another villain, this would not have mattered, right? Like we don't need to know this about the Mole Man. We don't need to know this about, any of Ultron or any of these tertiary characters because we have a villain. Kang, it doesn't matter. But because we're trying to set this person up to have a redemption arc and to be a character, we've now allowed Red Hulk to completely, in his mythos, to completely kind of hijack what should be a Captain America movie, where we really should be talking about Sam Wilson as Captain America. And that's not our fault as viewers. That's how the film worked, right? That's the film doing that.
He took so much focus from Captain America. He took so much focus from Sam's journey. I don't think he really had much of an arc. And I remember, like, I read an article just the other day where they were talking about the only character who had a full developmental arc in this whole movie was Falcon. because he started out as just, I'm trying to prove myself. He has a major, heroic moment, in the climactic battle at Celestial Island. And then, when he's at the end of the movie where he's recovering in the hospital, he's coming back into his own, and now he is truly going to be getting the mantle of Falcon. Like it was just sort of probationary at first, but now he's like, he's truly is going to be an Avenger going forward at some point, at least per Sam. So I was like, great. Sabra or Ruth. I don't know what she almost didn't really need to be in there. And I understand they had so much rewriting with her because of a lot of real world issues.
She was a Mossad agent.
Yeah,
that doesn't.
And then she's just
territories right now.
Red. She's a Red Room. She's a former widow. And that's why she can, fight really well. She has a costume for about 5 minutes in the movie. It's mostly covered up, and then afterwards you only see her in a suit again.
But see, I can think of so many. I can think of so many other badass street level femme fatale type heroes. Like, why did we need the 30-second Black Widow knockoff? Like there are a ton of other street level superhero women in this that could have taken that role. In the comics and everything else. Well, like, did we? Because that's what it felt like. It felt like, okay, this is not Yelena.
It's a shame she was used in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because Bobby Morse Mockingbird would have been perfect. And part would have been absolutely
a Mockingbird, Misty Knight. I think Caleb, you mentioned like, why didn't we have Misty Knight there in the but she was in the TV series, and that's now been made canon, so we kind of technically can't have her. There's a lot of stuff where I was just sort of like, well, if you're going to be changing so much in this movie and dropping whole characters and dropping an entire plot thread of the Serpent Society by
which we didn't even need.
Members.
Yeah,
we didn't even need
such a bad
didn't
job
need that at all. And I love Giancarlo Esposito, but like here I think he was sorely underused as Sidewinder. Oh, he was good, but like, blink and you miss him. So, but the Bucky cameo was nice. That was a really good moment, and I love that because that was a moment that, again, if you had watched Falcon and Falcon Winter Soldier, would have been a great callback to that series of like, just their relationship and how it's changed and grown over the years, and working together and now being a part, like how they operate together.
Not exactly a cameo, but I think there's a character that we haven't talked about that I'm surprised. You guys know we got D-Man.
We did, Dumpy. Or did we set up his brother? Yeah. Did we get his brother?
No, I didn't catch that. I didn't realize we got...
Well, and also, Marvel, thank you for putting William Mark McCullough on my screen because...
I mean, the man was given bareface. Did you notice he was like when he was with his beard, he was like, he was totally given bareface.
Yeah.
Why I say that it might be his brother, that they might be setting it up as if there is a D-Man in the future, it would be his brother.
Okay.
They make it a very strong point the first time this man is introduced. Before you get his name, he's like, my brother joined the Air Force because of you, Sam Wilson.
But
and then you find out later
it is the same name.
It'd be Dumpy, and I'm sure it starts with a D.
Well, he's on IMDb, has it listed as Dennis Dumphy. I didn't make that connection, and I'm pissed at D-Man.
Yeah. I'd love to see more of him.
We'll see it again.
So we get D-Man on the same day we get same movie we get Adamantium in, which I think is another point. Like, this is an entryway. It's another thing that happened, right? You also gave us our first X-Men as far as the MCU goes through Adamantium.
Also, well, no, we had Ms. Marvel, the Rebel.
That's what true.
Thing. But I also love that Adamantium was almost a MacGuffin. Like after the discovery of it, they don't talk about his. They don't care. It doesn't matter.
It's established.
It was just the conceit to get the story going. Yeah.
Yeah, and also to create the conflict with the Japanese, and that was, and so that whole dogfight scene, that was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it was cool.
Yep.
Did it feel like it was almost forced? Well, yeah.
And I have to say, I thought the effects were really good in this.
I did too.
Yeah,
I thought
except for
the
the end.
effects were really good.
Except for the end. I could write. I could just talk for hours about Red Hulk and how detailed that CGI was. Very, very every individually animated chest hair. He was very woofy, like very, very woofy Hulk.
But there is
the
part of me
green
that
screen,
would love to
whatever.
have seen. There's this part of me that would have loved to have seen the mustache disappear. Like the comics. There's a part of me that would have loved to.
Well, there's a
sucked
part of
into
me
his
that
face.
doesn't want no, just make the mustache a dark black Red Hulk mustache.
Yeah.
Give me Red Hulk with the stash. No, I think the transitions were great, and just seeing the Red Hulk on screen and having it look like it's supposed to was really cool. And just and it's visibly different than the Hulk. I didn't feel like I was watching an Incredible Hulk that had been color corrected red. It was different.
Right.
And I think that they pulled that off really well. So kudos to the CGI team.
Great modeling over, Harrison Ford. You could see his features in the Red Hulk face. That was well done. But like the actual superimposition at the end, that clearly this was a very edited reshot sequence with the Falcon versus the Red Hulk. It was so green screened. They might as well not have been in the same movie.
I don't. I thought that was a little more seamless than that.
Mm-mm.
And also, I mean, we've been harping about the rewrites. I would be interested in somebody who didn't know about the behind the scenes history, how they felt, how cohesive a feel it had. Because I think when you do know those stories, you're looking, and that's human nature, I mean, how Avengers had reshoots,
Oh yeah.
The first Avengers. I mean, I don't think there's any Marvel movie that didn't have reshoots. Whether it's just on technical issues or they actually are revising the storyline. But when you do know that it was so pronounced in this, to the extent that it got pushed back twice,
right,
the release date, I think you kind of look for that, and that's fun in one level. But I also think it takes away from your overall enjoyment in another.
Yeah, I think if I didn't know that there were so many reshoots and re-edits and story changes in this, I probably would have
relaxed about it.
I would have started. Yeah, I would have started in a very different place when the credits were when the Marvel Studios opener, which by the way was different. It was not the usual animated Marvel Studios. Let's see the past films. It was just plain black and white, almost like newsreel style. Right at the beginning. So, and I think Omar actually mentions here the movie had a new preamble sequence too. It was barely a sequence. It was just sort of Marvel Studios.
In terms of what happens before the film, though, I assume everybody got the Thunderbolts.
The trailer.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. We had Superman too. And it was kind of cool sitting at a Marvel movie and that being the only trailer that received applause. That was kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of cool.
I mean, we got some good like tittering and rumbling for the Fantastic Four trailer, which looked beautiful on the big screen. I'm so excited for that. I'm excited for Thunderbolts because I know it looks like it's bringing the humor, which this movie unfortunately did not have much of the usual Marvel or MCU.
Well, the thing is, though,
it's not a funny topic. It's not.
At the same token, my favorite Marvel film and my second favorite comic book film is The Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and that's not a laugh riot. I mean,
not at all.
But
it was well written and well
I think that's okay. Yeah,
it was much better written and much better paced than this was. And
yeah.
so
Well, it's different. It covered a very different, very different terrain.
And I think this one might have been trying, or at least they might have been trying to make it feel more like that.
Yeah, but that didn't succeed if they were actually trying it. It just seemed to be, too traditionally action driven for that to take place.
We've mentioned him a few times though, but I think it's worth re-talking about how good Carl Lumbly was. As Isaiah Bradley, that. So I was talking earlier about, the movie
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily make
breaks
you
your
think
heart,
a whole lot. One of my favorite parts of the film, or one of my favorite things, is after the film was over, my niece is asking me about him and was he, the first Captain America, and explaining who that was, which led into broader conversations about real life things like the Tuskegee Airmen and stuff that that character is kind of based on. That to me was a fun moment because that did what, what I wanted to do, was then to bring up these real life things and these conversations that, where it's art imitating life to a degree. I thought that he was a fun character. Where we talk about you hadn't let me live with Thaddeus with Thaddeus Ross enough to really care about the redemption arc. I feel like they actually were successful at that with Isaiah Bradley, because there was enough emotion there. There's enough empathy built into there, because he's on the opposite end. He didn't get to be president of the United States. He was imprisoned and is now living in a gym. Right. So there was enough of empathy included in that I could lock onto it and be like, hey, I do care about this character. I care about this character deeply, and I don't want to see him being hijacked and used and hurt and threatened like that. And I think it was very well delivered by the entire cast around him, but especially Lumpy.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that he's betrayed, by Sam, like he feels betrayed by Sam. It's like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be back in the cell. Like you really feel for this character, and I think they used him well. They could have maybe done a little bit more with him, but at the same time, I think what they did use him with is hold on.
With the shows that we have like this, again, we traditionally talk about a comic book or a comic book arc involving the characters. I had intended on the Truth, Red, White, and Blue, to be my book, but it's 7 issues and it's 7 dense issues. Yeah. So I just didn't have the bandwidth to do that. But for people who are looking for Isaiah's story, it was a 2003 miniseries, which kind of upends a lot of things about the Captain America program and Super Serum and just fun old conspiracy. So, definitely go to that.
I forgot that Kyle Baker co-created him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I forgot about that.
Yep. Those excellent covers. I mean, that's one series where all 7 issues have just fantastic covers. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've kind of brought into it there. So we'll just start as we usually do. We'll start with Steve. So in terms of the comic arc that you have, what characters are involved there?
So I went way back. I was like, this leader character seems pretty interesting. I want to see, like, where did he really start? And obviously, he started in the, way well back in Tales of Astonish, I think 62 maybe, so like way back. But he was a big Hulk rival, big Hulk enemy, and then he died. Well, in 1969, they resurrected him. Let me see if I can bring up this here. And I was able to get a copy of the Marvel Masterworks Incredible Hulk Volume 5, which picks up with issue 111 of the Incredible Hulk to 121, and the leader returns in 115. And let's just say this is peak Stan Lee. It is peak Herb Trimpe. It is just and also they did give credit to the letterer, who was Artie Simek. So we actually get some credit there, which is great. But yeah, I mean, this is very much like classic Marvel. And in this one, we've got the leader coming back from the dead. He's resurrected somehow. We find out, he tells this whole story. It's like, yeah, my intellect is so amazing. My gamma intellect is so powerful that I didn't necessarily die. I just went into a very, very long sleep. And my resurrection humanoid that I had, just for such an occasion, brought me back to life. So you puny humans get to experience me again. But the Incredible Hulk at this point has been captured. He's been through space. He's fought the Sandman, fought Mandarin for some reason. And he's finally made it back to the base that Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross commands. It's a secret weapons base, and they've been able to knock him out. So Betty Ross is, of course, on base, along with Major Talbot, who's Betty's sometimes love interest. And they've got the Hulk there. They're like, what do we do with this guy? I mean, he's too powerful. He destroys everything we have. We can't figure out how to, change him back to Bruce Banner. So what are we going to do? Well, thankfully, the leader shows up, and he's like, you know what? Well, not only am I not dead, and as a former supervillain criminal, you can't prosecute me because I died, and therefore statute of limitations has gone out. And I'm sure the two lawyers on this are clearly in agreement with that. It's like, yeah, if you die and you come back to life, then whatever your record was, it's been expunged. It's fine. And he says to Ross, it's like, we need to partner up on this. You don't want the Hulk destroying everything. He's been your, thorn in your side. You need to get rid of him, or at least stop him. Betty's not going to let you kill him. So, I won't kill him for you, but I'll find a way to keep him under lock and key so you don't have to worry about destroying things. And Ross is like, let's hear this guy out. He seems like a good egg. I mean, his head's shaped like one, so he must be okay. And so the leader goes ahead and imprisons the Hulk in a living plastic or a plasticine prison cell. So no matter how much Hulk punches it and tries to get out of there, it reverberates that same power back onto the Hulk, so he can't actually get out. And, Hulk feels betrayed at that point by Betty because he sees Betty on there. Betty spends the entire 3-issue arc crying about how she's really sad about, how Hulk's being treated. And the leader's like, this is great. This is definitely going to be my, my legacy here. I've stopped the Hulk. And Ross is like, well, this is great too. I'm sure we can get along with this leader guy. Just give him anything he wants in his lab. It'll be totally cool. Of course, Betty figures out that the leader has now imprisoned the Hulk, and now he's going to use the opportunity to take over America's nuclear arsenal, fire it at the Soviet Union, and create World War III, destroying the Earth in the process, and then becoming, the leader of the planet. No notes. I'm sure that's a good idea. Betty, of course, discovers this, tells Talbot, tells Ross, and basically is like, look, this guy he's trying to take this is why he took Hulk off the board. It wasn't, for our benefit, it was for his. He mind controls the entire base except for Betty, because Betty's sad. So he gives her a special crown that she can wear so she doesn't get affected by his brainwaves, and then proceeds to basically take over the nuclear arsenal. She frees Hulk. She saves Hulk. She gets him out of his prison. Hulk escapes, tries to, fight the leader. Of course, the leader's got his own superhumanoid there to fight Hulk. He teleports into a desert island. Hulk has to fight him and everything. This is over the course of 3 issues, so it's all just very crazy. Somehow he comes back. The leader has fired the first missile, and the only way he can stop it is if he turns into Bruce Banner again. So Betty calms him down. She gets him to turn human again. He saves the day, and the leader fires another missile, and so he has to turn back into the Hulk so he can actually jump up really high and attach this missile and stop it from destroying the Soviet Union. And in doing that, he actually rides the missile, which is wonderful. The art in this is just wonderful. Lots of posing, lots of punch with a point, or hands going this way. Everybody's kind of, in the middle of some action pose. Just really fun, exciting stuff. Very 60s, everything's declaratory. But this gives you an idea of who the leader was at the beginning. He's just a megalomaniacal kind of guy. He's clearly thought of everything and has the power to take over everybody's mind, except for Betty for some reason. He doesn't have feelings for Betty. There's no romantic anything there. He just doesn't find her a threat, so of course he just doesn't even think about her, which allows her to go and free the Hulk. But there's just, it's this constant obsession, and that's very similar. Why his character here is presented very similar to General Ross. Ross has a single purpose. His purpose is to get the Hulk and get him off the board, wipe him off the board. If it destroys Banner in the process, well, too bad. He's kind of a criminal anyway because he became the Hulk, and I don't know if it was on purpose or not. We got to get him off the board. And Betty spends her whole time trying to save Banner, trying to save the Hulk, stop her dad. But Ross, the whole time, he's just sort of like, Betty, I love you, but Hulk's bad. Leader comes in, Hulk's bad. Everything is just it's very good and evil, black and white, with these characters. The only one who, of course, is sort of in the middle is Hulk himself. And I think that early on, when they created the character of the Leader, when they present him as a villain, he's so over the top, one note, that you kind of don't get much in the way of nuance. And contrasting this with what we saw in the film, I think since then, obviously in the 2000s, and I think Caleb and Bill, you're probably going to mention, or Caleb especially is going to mention how the Leader's presented more in a more modern sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's no redemption here in the 60s with the Leader. He's just very much like, this is a crazy brain guy. But I think they've really done a good job, really done a service to, moving this character into a much more modern light than how he appeared back in the 60s.
Well,
but it's so much fun. It's so much fun to read this kind of stuff. It's just page after page with just beautiful colors and wacky poses and declaratory sentences like, it's just so much fun to read this kind of stuff in the 60s, this Silver Age wonderful stuff.
Yeah, I've been going through and reading the Submariner stuff from this era too. I'm up in the 70s now, but yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It's a different time in comics and it's fun to read. But one of the things I love about that is, you really see in this early characterization of Samuel Stearns, and even the way that Herb Trimpe draws him in those issues, it's almost like a Steve Ditko character. In a lot of ways. Like I see a lot of Steve in there. I mean, you had the Kirby crackle there, but just in the way that Trimpe is drawing here. You said earlier it was peak Herb Trimpe. I look at this and I see Herb Trimpe that's still trying to find his own like personalized style, and to me, he's more of a Ditko analog there.
He's not there.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is very Ditko-ish.
There's a lot of variation on how he draws people's heads. Let's put it that way. There's a lot
but he's got a lot of head choices here. He's got a lot of choice,
but he wasn't there yet. He wasn't there yet.
But it is good.
He was a very long time Hulk artist. I mean, years and years. But I think there's bits of Romita, there's bits of other 60s artists. He doesn't have his own style yet from the pages that you see here.
But one of the cool things,
but there's some really interesting heads in there.
Great.
But I will say this is a lot of fun. It's in terms of a 60s arc, it has everything you want in a Hulk story. Hulk is confused, yet Hulk ends triumphant. Betty's losing her shit. And Talbot is an irredeemable prick. I mean, it has everything you want in the story. And in here, like all of a sudden the Leader has like an 11-foot robot, and in a modern comic book store, you would have had 6 issues leading to almost like 22 feet there, leading up to the creation of that robot and where that robot comes from, and the robot would have a backstory. Here's just like, hey, Hulk, you have to fight this robot. So that's fun in its own. Yeah,
so much fun. Vic actually asked here: is the soldier in the background anyone significant? Previous feature that was basically. General Ross and Talbot, Major Talbot, appeared in the background of a few things. But I mean, you're right. This is like a perfect 60s Hulk arc. 3 issues. Hulk's imprisoned, Hulk escapes. Hulk's imprisoned, Hulk escapes. Hulk's imprisoned, Hulk escapes, and rides a giant missile to the Soviet Union and blows it up, and then falls in the ocean. And there you go. And there's the next arc where he falls in the ocean, and Caleb, guess who he sees in issue number 118?
Old Ankle Wings himself.
And he teams up with him. He fights him, of course, but then he teams up with him. save the day thing.
So one of the things I was going to note, though,
Man.
this whole issue actually right here isn't just a one-off thing where Samuel Stearns kind of comes back from the dead. This is actually a major pinpoint in the Hulk mythos. It kind of created the roadmap that got us things like, Indestructible Hulk, Immortal Hulk, and created the whole Green Door kind of idea. Well, that seed was planted here in the 60s. And I think that's really cool where that came to fruition in the 2010s or 20-teens, late or 2020, when was Immortal, somewhere in there. But that seed was planted in the 60s, and I love that these characters. I love that about this. The way that we think about comics, especially Big Two comics, right? The legacy that they live. I think that's really, really cool.
Oh yeah. Well, so check it out if you like classic Hulk. Definitely check out the 60s Hulk, the Marvel Masterworks. You can get the omnibus that collect a lot of those stories.
I have it in an Epic collection.
Yeah, the Epic collections are really good too. Yeah. I have the first one that has the original Hulk issues, but there's several. They're really good.
I have weird digital combinations of Epic and Masterworks depending upon what was on sale.
So I've got some Masterworks. I've got several omnibuses up there, and I'm on deck. So you want me to talk about a comic now?
Sorry.
Yeah.
That popped up a lot faster than I thought it would. So,
so I kind of feel bad, right? I kind of feel bad because this was, as we just talked about, this was a Captain America movie, right? This was a Sam Wilson movie.
Yeah.
Most of the comics that I have that feature Sam Wilson as Captain America, or feature Sam Wilson really at all, are Avengers books, right? Or they and there's a couple of those that are really, really good. But they're not his stories. And other than him being a part and parcel of the overall team, they don't really showcase him. He's just he's an integral member of the team. But they don't do him justice. As far as Sam Wilson's Captain America goes, I'm not extremely well read on his solo stuff. I just haven't dug that much into it because I don't read Captain America for the most part. That's not a solo title that I've read, a lot of the, kind of the integral, you have to read these stories, but it's not something I follow monthly. And the only book that I do have that is a solo book by him is a Nick Spencer written book, which I really didn't want to talk about. It's not, I don't want to, it's not great. I just didn't want to rehash that. So I'm going to talk about a book that features two of the characters, that we saw in this movie. Neither one of them is Captain America. I'm going to talk about a book that features Red Hulk and the leader. And this one is relatively more contemporary. Came out circa 2012, 2013, 14, somewhere around in there. Wow. And that is Thunderbolts Red. Now, as you can see, this went on long enough that it got its own omnibus, right? So there are plenty of these issues, and they had several people working on them at the time. But what I like about this story, and the one I want to talk about, really happens at the very get-go, right? Starts in number 1, the first arc, 1 through 5. And this has got, it's written by Daniel Way, and it's art by Steve, or I guess lines by Steve Dillon with, not quite sure who did the cover. I guess Guru EFX did the cover, or did the colors for most of them. But yeah, it's Steve Dillon drawing some of these amazing characters, and he opens up the gate with exactly what you want. As you can see from the cover that Steve's shown up here, one of the main characters on this team is the Punisher. So we're getting Steve Dillon drawing the Punisher. I mean, that's any day of the week, that's a good thing. But overall, you see this iteration of the team change, but the initial team is going to be led by General Ross. It's Red Hulk. He recruits Elektra. He recruits Agent Venom. He recruits the Punisher, and he recruits Deadpool. And when I say he recruits them, he does it in the most Thaddeus Ross way ever. He just kind of doesn't give anybody a choice about what they're going to do. The story opens up. He's got the Punisher cornered, and basically he's like, "Hey, I called everyone," and a little racist. I called everyone that had a vowel in their last name and told them you were here, and so everybody's showing up in like 5 minutes or less to kill you. Basically alluding that all the the Italian mobs of all sects and just all the mobs are on their way to take him out. And he's like, I want you on my team. whether you walk out of here depends on if you say yes or not. And he says yes, and then he proceeds to feed the entire mafia army to Frank Castle, who does Frank Castle things in the most gory, gruesome way possible. But the whole first issue is kind of getting the team together. But one of the best moments in this getting the team together actually starts on issue 3, because it features the leader, right? And not the leader as we know him, not the green gamma big brain leader. This features kind of in the vein of what Steve was talking about. When we open up this story, we think the leader is dead again, right? The leader has been killed again, or at least subdued. And he says, because of my position, I was able to get him. We've been testing on him. We've turned him into the red leader, right? So we've used some of my gamma to infuse him, and that's part of how I control him. And of course, of all the characters for him to really, relate this to or relay this to, he's telling Deadpool, and Deadpool's like, Frank Castle's going to kill this motherfucker, right? Like, he's going to die. Like, what, you've wasted a lot of your time. Like, you just put the craziest sociopath on the planet in the room with this dude. This is not going to work out. Red Hulk is, he can't be bothered. He's got plans. And so he does. They bring the red leader to heel in a lot of ways, who's going to be working on this team as they go and they hunt down and assassinate, bad guys, the terrible people. And as the team is going to evolve over, I think almost 30 issues and stuff like that, but they're really setting on a collision course with, problems, as you might expect. This is a fun series. It is not the Thunderbolts as you might have known them up until this point in time. It's a hodgepodge of characters. Like I said, Agent Venom plays into this in some interesting ways, arguably it's just a collection of murderers. As they're going into work. Some really fun moments. I think Daniel Way set some really good tones to carry this all the way through. It was fun. It was, it was kind of ridiculous. You didn't know where they were going to go next or what they were going to do next. I mean, you end up with Ghost Rider on the team, and all of these characters are kind of in red and black costumes, just to match the mold, match the Red Hulk. So it goes some fun places. It really shows you how much of a scumbag Thaddeus Ross can be. It really gets into who the leader is. It talks a little bit about his brother, who I think a lot of people forget that his brother is also a super powered villain, and is just a crazy motherfucker himself. And so if you're curious about these characters and how they've been handled more contemporaneously, go check this book out. And of course, Deadpool was right, and Frank Castle puts a bullet in the leader's head at the end of the 3rd issue. But he ain't gone yet. So, hold on tight, and we'll see how this goes. But Frank Castle ain't going to let this dude. He gets to kill him a lot. It's kind of fun.
It's funny, but the leader there almost kind of looks with that shade of reddish purple, almost looks like a Sinestro.
A little bit.
Same
yeah.
Widow's Peak and everything, I think.
I have a question about the Omnibus. Does it include all the Charles Soule issues?
It does.
Okay.
I say all of them. Yeah. So Charles Soule the book, Daniel Way carried this through 1 through 11. Charles Soule took over writing duties from 12 to 26, and then Acker and Blacker, they took over. They did 27 through 32 and annual number 1, and I think finished it strong. And you've got throughout the series, you've got Steve Dillon, who does 1 through 6 and number 12. Phil Noto takes 7 through 11 and 13. Mateo Lally gets on for an annual. I mean, there's some really good. Gabriel Hernandez Walta does number 19. And it's really cool to see Walta draw these characters.
Yeah. And just in terms of credit is due. The the 2 covers that you showed, and all the covers up to 20 were by Julian Totino Tedesco.
Mm-hmm.
So that's worth mentioning. I did reread number 1. I did like this series until Charles Soule. That happens a lot. And Charles Soule did some stuff. He did something I actually did like, because the series through the first 2 arcs, Red and then Red Scare, are they're very Ross centric in terms of the missions that they have.
Mhm.
And then it changes a little bit where there's like a Punisher related mission and an Elektra related mission. So I did like a little bit what he did. I just don't think the execution was as good. He also wrapped up the 12th issue because Daniel Way had a disagreement with the editor and left prematurely. So
I did not know that. I was wondering why.
So
Daniel
if you
Way
read
got off.
12, it definitely reads like Daniel Way, but it's not him. I think a word that you didn't apply to this that I think does apply is sexy.
Yeah,
This is a kind of sexy series.
everybody fucks in this book.
Everybody, and it's so nice seeing Frank Castle get some. It's
Yeah.
so nice seeing that.
Like,
And it's with a team member, so you know.
Ross with Red Hulk, that would be
That's
fantastic to watch.
And I did mention like some complaints about like Ross being like kind of like an Amanda Waller character.
Mhm.
This was where it worked. You know, one of my favorite lines of him as a character ever is when they're about to approach Deadpool and his assistant asks him, "What are you doing?" And he just says, "Shopping." Like, there's some really cool stuff in this, and it is like it's fun and it's sexy, and this would have made a great television series.
Yeah.
In the current day, it would have been a sexy, fun, hyper violent series, and it had a lot going for it. And you know, with everybody who was on the team effectively being an anti-hero, you know, they can be characterized as a hero, but Jesus, their body count is insane. You know, they do share that, and it works. And at least for me, at least from the beginning, I do have to check out the Acker and Blacker stuff. I only have the first annual, which is really fun. But I did trail off around issue 14, 15 or so.
Acker and Blacker play really well with Ghost Rider when he's on the team, which brings in a whole different kind of element to the book, right? Because now, I mean, for a long time, Leader and Hulk were the hyper power. I mean, you had Deadpool, but Deadpool's power is that he's just annoying and doesn't die. But the rest of them don't have any powers; they're just murder machines. And then you get the penance stare on their team, and it's like, oh crap, what's going to happen here? So this book actually, I was still working construction, still building high rises and power plants when this book came out, and I had just gotten back into reading comics heavily again. I never gave up reading comics, but I'd taken a break. I moved around. I didn't have issues or a local comic shop, but I landed in Macon, Georgia long enough. I was able to find a comic shop and go start, get a pull box and pick up issues and stuff like that. And so this was one of the first ones I started grabbing and just reading in totality, this and Harrow County and stuff around the similar vein. So in a lot of ways, this got me to reading more superhero comics again and paying attention to canon again. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate this and enjoy it. It's just stupid comics and it's fun.
Yep.
We have a question here from Vic. Is Agent Venom the symbiote from Spider-Man, or is it somebody else?
It's Flash Thompson with the symbiote.
Yeah,
Flash Thompson.
I'm not too familiar with like all the Venom changes over the years, and then of course we had the Venom War and the Symbiote War and Venomverse and all that.
And with the conceit with Flash Thompson he was effectively handicapped at that point. But still wanted to serve his country and accepted the symbiote from Mesh.
Well, I think so. He had his legs literally blown off by an IED, and so he knee down, no legs, and so he took the symbiote on to give him that, to allow him to function as a hero again, as a soldier again, because he wasn't ready to give up that life. There is an arc. It wasn't necessarily if they ever revisit that. There's some seriously good comics to be written about that character, about Agent Venom.
Yeah, and just very honest discussions in that series about PTSD. Sorry, Jesus. I've never had it, so I don't know. There's some good stuff, and I love Flash Thompson as a character. I love a character that's grown that much from just being a one note, hey Parker, to something else. I just love his arc.
I mean, he's no Rick Jones, but
that's So Rick Jones, I mean, he's been probably the biggest missing character from the MCU this entire time. And funny enough, in classic Hulk that I was reading, there's a point where Betty's like, "I need to talk to Rick Jones." So he calls up the Avengers to try and get him, and talks to the housekeeper, who's like, "They never tell me nothing, missus." And except for the fact that apparently Captain America just died, and Rick Jones was out in space with him. And that's the little editorial note from Stan Lee was like, "We've got really crazy things going on in the Avengers. You should read it." Like, what is going on?
Steve, you mentioned Avengers, and that leads me to my book. So, the character that I'm focused on is Sam Wilson. Not necessarily focusing on Captain America Sam Wilson. I'm focusing on how I first got to know him, and that's as the Falcon. The very first Marvel comic I ever had in my hands as a small child in October 1973 was Captain America 169. Cap fought the Tumbler. Ooh, the Tumbler. And there was a guest appearance by T'Challa, by Black Panther. And that kind of leads into something that's directly influenced in the movie, in that the Cap's current suit was designed by the Wakandans. And that basically echoes something that happens 2 issues later, and that's when the Falcon first started to fly. So my association with Marvel is exactly as long as my association with Sam Wilson, which is really cool. But the book that I wanted to talk about, Steve, if you can put this up, this was from the Avengers early 2000s run. And if you see there on the credits, you can just make it out that the writer was Jeff Johns and the artist was Evan Reese. And Jeff Johns had taken over from Kurt Busiek for this particular title. And in the version that Johns has of the Avengers, they have left the United States government in terms of their sponsorship, and Stark in terms of their sponsorship, and they're now sponsored by the United Nations. And Cap very reluctantly, this was Steve Rogers' Cap, starts to consider Henry Peter Gyrich, who was like the Marvel Comics bureaucrat piece of shit, at this point for like 40 years. And he's considering him because of his background, and because he'll do stuff that the Avengers can't do, in a sense, to be the United Nations liaison for them. But he has to get through some people, and one of the people he has to get through is Sam Wilson here. Henry Peter Gyrich actually recruited the Falcon in the 1970s as a member of the Avengers, even though he had never been a members of the Avengers before. And it kind of was like an affirmative action hiring, because Black Panther wasn't available, and they're just outright say it there. So the Falcon becoming an Avenger initially was not because of his choice. He was strong-armed into doing it, and there's various arcs that explore that. But so he was a reluctant member of the Avengers in the late 70s. This is a different time. This is the early 2000s, and Sam is there as a valued member. But again, as I said, for this to happen, this to go ahead in this liaison position, he has to get Sam's approval, because he fucked with Sam more than anybody else. So you have this magnificent cover of the Falcon flying through, through New York skyline, Red Wing right behind him. And Steve, if you can just go through some of the pictures that I provided, some really great art. Reese is so good at musculature. Oh my God, he's so good at this. And it seems to me, if I was a comic artist, the Falcon would be one character I'd love to draw, just for the opportunities to have a character fly like that, So there's some action in here. What basically the storyline is Falcon and Gyrich meet. It's still icy, but in the area of New York where they're walking, some kid has been kidnapped. And initially, Gyrich was like, we shouldn't concern ourselves with let the cops take care of ourselves. And then Sam just says, dude, you know nothing about the Avengers. That's not what we do. There's no job that's too small. And so he goes after the information about this kid that was kidnapped. It turns out it's by a minor league villain, a version of Scarecrow that has kidnapped the kid. And you see there, it's just a very simple takedown, but it really goes to the heart of what Sam is about. And that's not turning a blind eye to justice, whether it's social justice or cosmic justice. He has to be on the right side of things. And this story really punches it in a really nice way. It's really top level Jeff Johns in terms of heroes being heroic. And it's a done in one. It's in various compendiums that you can pick up. But the actual issue number is number 64. Am I right? 64? I always want to say 61, but it's 64. And for a 23-page story, it's a gem. Caleb, I know that you know the Busiek Perez Avengers was incredibly important to you. Did you continue with the series after they left? Oh, you mutie. You're like an X-Men. You're mutie.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I hit mute. I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, I've got the full run. I've got the full run of Volume 3 upstairs, and almost I've got the full run of Volume 2. I think I may be missing an issue or two. I've basically got some of Volume 4 is missing, but I've basically got everything up until current Avengers now. But I kept up with it, read this story, thought it was great. Actually, I think they did a really good. What they did with Falcon in this story was what I actually thought they were going to be doing with Triathlon. I thought they were building up for that. And then when they didn't carry that through, when Triathlon kind of had his mental breakdown and realized he was being used on a number of levels, and actually contained the spirit of the original Triathlon. I think they took the elements of that and really worked it in for Falcon. And I thought they did it really, really well.
Yep. And just for other things to recommend John's run, great character moments with Jack of Hearts, great character moments with Scott Lang, Ant-Man, characters that really didn't have tremendous depth prior to this. They have their moments. There's an extended arc with She-Hulk freaking the fuck out, which is almost traditional comic nonsense goodness at points, but behind the story is it does address that there is rage within Jennifer as well. So some really good stuff, but again, for 23-page get to know Falcon story, I don't think you can do better than this one.
And this led up to No More Mutants too.
It precedes that.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah. They had Johns and then Chuck Austin for a little bit, and then right into No More Mutants.
Yeah, because it was the end of this series where you see, you mentioned him, Jack of Hearts show back up, and go boom boom.
And leads into New Avengers.
Yep.
As well.
Yeah, that was Bendis, because I know was Bendis was that Bendis, or did Bendis
did the last 4 issues?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he did the last 4 issues. Yeah. What
the Avengers
disassembled.
The Avengers is a massive blind spot for me, because when I was reading back when I was a kid, I barely paid the attention to the Avengers any mind. It was all X-Men and Spider-Man for me. And then when I got back into comics, like Avengers was like a distant fifth. I think the only time I picked up any Avengers book was during the AVX crossover, back in 2012. So it just didn't really, hasn't been really in my wheelhouse. So
when everybody was in love with the X-Men, everything, for me, it's always been the Avengers.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a normal reaction when it comes to Marvel fans. It's like the X-Men are in like their own world for the most part. You can read all X-Men comics and not know what else is going on in the Marvel universe at all, and vice versa. You can read Avengers comics and like X-Men, who cares? That's all the way over there. But yeah, interesting. And also, Vic did come back. He had a couple comments here going back to the beginning of the show about his horns. Caleb, I do wear horns most of the time at conventions, sometimes smaller ones with spirit gum on the forehead, sometimes larger ones closer to the icon. If you're watching, his YouTube icon has a great image there that apparently was done by Todd Wills, also known as Ginny, back when LiveJournal was a thing.
Very cool.
Were you guys on LiveJournal?
I was.
I was.
I wasn't.
I did mostly translations of German comic strips.
What was your username?
Oh, fuck if I know.
I was Boomer Z1. That's how Tito and I met. Was LiveJournal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably still out there somewhere. I don't know.
My stuff's still there. I can't sign into the account, but my account is there. Yeah. None of the pictures though, because they were all like Photo Bucket. You know.
Oh yeah.
They're
all good.
But all right, cool. We'll talk. I think we have to speed through our other comic recommendations. So if you're okay with an accelerated version of that, I think we can get it in. So Steve, why don't we start with you? Talk about a book that you're reading that you're digging.
So I'm a huge fan of the Hellboy universe, but mostly, I went crazy all in on BPRD. But also there was another part of the Hellboy universe that was concerned with the Victorian era and Sir Edward Grey, who's kind of a paranormal investigator, worked at Her Majesty's pleasure, Queen Victoria, to investigate paranormal and interesting supernatural things going on in England. Well, fast forward a couple hundred years, not only was he dead and his soul trapped in hell, Hellboy was able to free him at the end of the world, and his spirit was then reincarnated in Avalon, which is the last remaining kingdom of Earth that was left standing after the entire world exploded. And so it's very mystical, it's very magical, supernatural, and he is now essentially the protector. And that leads us to the latest World of Hellboy book, The Serpent in the Garden, Ed Grey and the Last Battle for England. You'll notice the little insignia, if you're watching, right under Dark Horse Comics is Curious Objects. It's the new sort of imprint that is for Mike Mignola's books, as well as his collaboration with Christopher Golden. So this book, it's a 3-part miniseries. The first 2 issues have come out. Third issue is coming in March. It's written by Mike Mignola, drawn by Ben Stenbeck, and colors by Dave Stewart. And if you have read any of the Ed Grey miniseries, of which there's several, he's just a fascinating character. He's really fun, to read, especially in, his pre-death days in Victorian England. He's a pretty cool investigator, gets embroiled in all sorts of craziness and wildness with witches and, the Heliotropic Brotherhood of Ra and all sorts of things. But now here at the end of the world, in the forever kingdom of Avalon, he finds himself in a new position. And that is because, contrary to the new queen of Avalon, Queen Alice Monaghan, who is a character in the Hellboy books, the former wannabe queen of Avalon, Morgan Le Fay, her spirit has been found and is elsewhere in the afterlife, in the netherworld. She discovers a character who's shown up, and if you saw the Hellboy movie that David Harbour was in back, I think, 2019, this character does make an appearance, and it is the Gruagach of Loughlayan. He's a strange, pig-headed creature, a changeling of sorts, and also an ancient elven warrior. Morgan Le Fay decides that she's going to recruit his spirit, and give him a chance to sort of, redeem himself by battling the champion of the new Queen of Avalon for her title. So Morgan Le Fay can actually become the new Queen of Avalon. And just, the fantasy of it all, just the scope of it is just beautiful. And this kind of goes with what, Mignola's really been working on recently, which is, finding more fantasy, looking at the folktale side of of storytelling, and it just so happens that this is part of the world of Hellboy, and I couldn't have loved this more. I'm really excited for the third issue. It's really great that it's only 3 issues, so there's not a huge story, but it's just so fun to see and so beautifully drawn. Stenbeck does such a great job here. This moment here, Ed Gray, if you're watching, is transforming into essentially the Green Man, the new champion of Avalon. And the same token, the Gruagach is also, going through his own history, explaining his history to Morgan Le Fay, and she also transforms him to become her champion. So it's a battle of wills that I know is going to be crazy in the climactic third issue, but it's just such an interesting folklore-centered story, beautiful art, and it's a great payoff for anybody who's been reading and really knows all the deep cuts of Hellboy and like the weird sort of tangential Hellboy stories and characters over the past 15, 20 years. So definitely recommend this if you love Hellboy, if you love like the weirder side, the Victorian side of Hellboy stories in the Hellboy universe. Pick this one up.
Nice. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about a book you're reading that you're digging.
I sure will. Steve, I'm just jumping back in the Hellboy universe. I learned the other day something interesting, that Beast of Burden is actually part of the Hellboy universe, because I recently read that and didn't know it. And I think that's awesome. And made me feel really good. So last time we gathered around the proverbial comics table to talk about things, I told you about a book that I had read from a publisher called Avery Hill Publishing. It's a British publisher. And I read another one of their offerings this past week and really thought it was fantastic. Number one, I thought it was fun because it covers a lot of ground. But I also, one of the things I most appreciated about it was anthology. And so it was these stories, like 12 or 13 stories broken up into little or smaller pieces. And I can kind of just go through each one by one. I sent you a graphic of the cover. You mind throwing that up for me? So yeah, the book is called Safer Spaces by Kit Anderson. And like I said, it's an anthology, and it just covers all of the stories kind of have the connective tissue of being about nature and either mental health or identity. So it talks about it, and they cover a variety of different focal points. Some of them are slice of life, some of them are magic, some of them are there's this this kind of story that goes throughout about this wizard that is kind of being narrated, and people are talking about how weird and quirky the wizard is, and does he do anything cool, any neat tricks? And it's like, no, he's just he just has, it's this conversation about whether magic is real, but the whole time he's doing this, he's smoking a pipe and like saving baby birds and, picking up things that will hurt animals. And they're like, does he, what makes him magical? And it's kind of, the narration is being facetious while this guy, saves all of these creatures and just kind of walks around and is very, quietly wise. But yeah, so it goes over all of these different kind of places. Some of the art style are very, as Steve just threw it up here, put up for everybody to see. Some of them are very minimalist, very dark, just kind of scratchy. But then she also, or I say she, I'm not sure, Kit gets into a style that is much kind of like Evan Dorkin, since we just mentioned them. I mean, you see a lot of cross hatching, a lot of fine nib work. There's a lot of dedication to comic strips in here. You can see how they've studied comic strips throughout several of the panels where they're just kind of these small, intricate things. There are panels in here that remind me of Gillian Tamaki, or pages in here that remind me of Gillian Tamaki, and this type of work that you would see in modern YA novels that are kind of monochromatic, deep works. And so one of the things that I'm kind of falling in love with the things that, at least the two, I've read several of the books now, but at least from what we're seeing from Avery Hill Publishing, are that they are finding these kind of singular writer artists to give us these, very human stories, whether or not it's a single tale that talks about a son's relationship to his mother's art, or whether it's a story that's broken up into several smaller pieces, like an anthology series. they're showing you a variety of different styles of art from these same artists who are very, very adept and very flexible in what they're able to leave on the page. I think that Kit has an amazing eye for composition. This is actually what Steve just threw up here is one of my favorite stories in the book. It all is kind of drawn in, Bic pen and ink, that, it looks like something that you just took a pen out of a package and did. But the story is about this young girl who she's starting to sprout these red flowers, and in the world that she lives in, that just kind of, it's a thing. And she knows that she's just going to basically become a plant. And so she's kind of having these conversations with her mother about what happens once she becomes a plant. Will she be planted in a park? Will she be in her mother's garden? And so it's almost a metaphor for a kid with cancer, right? Like having to talk to their parent about, I'm going to die. Like I'm changing there's things happening in my body that I can't control. And I'm going to go, but you're going to have something to remember me by. Incredibly powerful work. And again, this connection with psyche and with nature. So lots of amazing stories in this that deal with a lot of human issues. Again, I read this on the on my comics app, which is the comic. What's it called? I'll get to it. Global Comics app, and very, very, very good read. Published in 2004. So I wish this would have been on my favorite books of the year. I think if I had read it last year.
Cool.
I mean, your recommendation last time as well. I need to just go ahead and put everything that they sell into a cart and just go broke reading them, I guess. That's
or for a very low price a month, you could just have it and a couple hundred other publishers on the Global Comics app.
True.
But the creators don't get all the money when you do it that way. So
yeah,
it is a kind of choose your own adventure in reading.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know how much space I just have. So much space for more books. So clearly I need to have the physical copies.
Shut up.
If Jason were here, he would have run by and just whacked the back of my head and said, "No more."
I love it how Steve and I both have boxes in the back.
And this, because I'm doing my reorg again, and so I just have to keep moving them around. Yeah. It's a giant game of Tetris.
I have them all in other places, and there's a reason that door is closed.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a book to talk about, and it was interesting that we talked about pulp characters unexpectedly early in the show. Though these characters are not pulp characters, they are pulp era characters. For the last 15 years, on and off, Dynamite has been publishing Green Hornet books. And the most recent one is one where he teams up with 1940s superheroine Miss Fury. So this is the first issue. Miss Fury, just for her background, she wasn't initially a comic book character, but a comic strip character. This just seems to be following us here. And something very interesting is she was written and drawn by a woman, Tarpey Mills. So it gave the character, which, as you see here, there's a lot of connective tissue to Catwoman, but it did give those stories a very particular flavor. So what happens within Green Hornet and Miss Fury? These are two characters that have never met each other before, but they do have a connection. It turns out they were both mentored by a college professor named Javier Mercado. And Harvey Mercado, like the two of them, like Britt Reed, who was Green Hornet, and like Marla Drake, who was Miss Fury, also had an identity as a crime fighter. He led a double life, and the name of his character was the Silver Shrike. And from what the information that you have available within the text, this was sort of a Zorro Scarlet Pimpernel type of character. So it turns out that their mentor, Javier Mercado, was murdered, and a cryptic note is left at the crime scene, and that note brings both Green Hornet and Miss Fury together at the same time. They get cornered by a crowd of thugs, and the vigilantes, the two of them, they have no choice but to join forces and defend themselves, and it's not going well. They're about to get their asses kicked, their asses handed to them. But just at the last second, a particular car drives through a window, and it turns out to be Kato, Green Hornet's assistant. His orders were not to follow him, but Kato's not one for following orders. But the timely rescue turns the tide, and they are able to defeat the various thugs that are there. And they're comparing notes, and it turns out that it isn't only Silver Shrike that's been murdered. They're targeting other masked heroes, and the targets include Miss Fury and Green Hornet themselves. So I think this is scheduled for a 5-issue miniseries. Let me just bring you back here. The artist, and this is not a name I am familiar with at all, is Federico Soressa, and he just has a very, very nice noir feel. This isn't a black and white comic, but it does feel like a black and white film, and it does feel like the era that they're talking about, where the action takes place, which is clearly the 1940s. It's written by Alex Segura, who has a long history, mostly on the business end of comics, with stints at Archie as editor-in-chief and as an editor, and DC as head of publicity, and I believe Oni Press, he was there for a time. He also has a side career, though, as a crime novelist. So he's a really good choice to venture into this world. A lot of the Green Hornet Dynamite books have been hit or miss. This one seems more hit. And this was ordered on a spur of the moment thing. It was like, oh, I have like $2.24 more cents in budget. Let me do that. And I'm glad I did. I think I'm going to be picking up the other issues in this series. So unexpected treat.
Yeah, Daniel Williamson, he says, "Yay! I've been reading Green Hornet, Miss Fury."
Yeah, it's like perfectly paced. That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, very good.
And second issue is out already, so it is available if you are interested.
So I haven't kept up on the Hornet books. Steve, when we got our packages of from the blind packages that we got at Heroes Con, I did have a
Baltimore
book in one of them, that I didn't have a one shot. So that kind of sowed the seed for this, of like looking out for other stuff that might come out. And I'm glad I did. It was a good story, really good story. Cool. Yeah. And Caleb, I think you particularly would have liked the angle of a vigilante hunter and this type of masked hero. It's cool. Yep. You're a mutie.
Lesson one night. I got to quit muting. I'm sorry. That's a character I'm not really super familiar with of all the pulp characters. I know you and I, we kind of, one of the things we bonded over was our love of Project Superpowers and stuff. So I love this type of character. Just never got into Green Hornet. Although there's been some, really, really great versions of it. Now, the original Green Hornet character just has a domino mask, not this kind of full face thing with the.
No, he does have a full mask. I don't know if every depiction of it is like that, but he does have that. It actually isn't a pulp character; it's a radio character. But those kind of worlds were hand in hand. And he also is the grand nephew of the Lone Ranger.
I did know that. I knew that random fact. I thought that was always pretty cool.
But the radio show, it was so refreshing to hear this come out of Matt Wagner's mouth, because there was an episode of Word Balloon where they were discussing the Green Hornet radio series, and it was something I never really latched onto. And he just said it, and it was just perfect. Yeah, they're boring as shit. And, great character concept, and there's a 60 series. All the episodes, all 26 episodes are up on YouTube, that 20th Century Fox produced contemporaneously with the second season of Batman. And it's like Batman without the laughs. So it's cool color schemes and cool action, of course, with Bruce Lee as Kato. So that's something cool to look if you want to have an introduction to the character that doesn't tax your brain too much. I would suggest going to the 26 episode series. It's a lot of fun. Yep.
Check it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping up this episode of the Comic Book Bears. And on our way to the end, we have 2 segments that signify that we're wrapping something up. And the first of those segments is when we show off our Geek Gets. We show off something, where it may be toys or comic book related thing, anything that's sort of geeky. I'm sorry. I got a
Bubble
burp there. That's we're good now. That was causing me some pain there, but this is a segment where we kind of show off what we've gotten over the last 2 weeks. Steve, do you have something you can show off?
I do. There is the Avengers poster in the back here that is for the Avengers #1 from last year. Because it features a prominent Sam Wilson, Captain America, right in the middle there, behind Carol. But I actually am going to do a throwback to last year's Geek Get because it is perfectly pertinent, finally, for the movie that it was promoting. So last year, McDonald's, in some of their Happy Meals, did Captain America Brave New World toys, or actually like little plush hangy things, and I got 3 of them. 3 of my favorite characters from the movie. We have Sam Wilson, Captain America, looks really cool. And we've also got our Falcon right here. And then my favorite character. What is this one again? Is this Diamondback? Yes, this is Diamondback, who was originally, as of last year, was still part of the movie. So it's because we didn't get her in the film, you get to see her here. This is, I believe it was Rosa Salazar is the actress playing her. Yeah. She was a major member of the Serpent Society, which, of course, that storyline they completely eviscerated. So.
That somebody needs to be beaten in the street for what they did to the Serpent Society.
Yeah. Oh, which, by the way, if you look very closely, and I had to see it on the second run through, the patch that Sidewinder has on his back clearly says Serpent Society.
Yep.
And in the rest of the film, they're referring to them as Serpent. It's like, no, Serpent Society. It says it right there on his patch very prominently. But anyway, those are my Geek Gets.
Cool. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what do you have to show us?
So my husband talked me out of getting the really cool Red Hulk popcorn bucket that I wanted, which was like it looked like a PVC action figure Red Hulk, like grabbing it. But I did get the popcorn bucket tin.
Ooh.
So from the movie, it's features the shield on one side and Red Hulk grabbing it, and then it's got a great Red Hulk. Be using it as a trash can in my office, along with my Captain Marvel one. So that's one of them. And then in the mail, I got, as another Geek Get, the second edition, the second Sunday edition of Ice Cream Man. So Volume 2. I have not cracked the cellophane on this, so I can't tell you what issues are in this, but if you want to read Ice Cream Man, and you should because it's amazing, the Sunday editions are a really good way to do that. They're basically omnibus size, or small omnibus size, and you can get them for like $30 to $40. So go check that out.
Okay, so there's 2 or 7 things, however you quantify it, that I want to show you. The first thing is, this was just something on Remainder I saw during my errands, and this is a Chopper figure that the line is called Droidables, and if you move his head, he makes different noises. I could play with shit like this all day. I had to get him. But the bigger Geek Get is I did receive from Entertainment Earth. They actually left it in the original McFarlane Toys box. The full assortment, full assortment of Superpowers figures from Wave 10. So this is the unboxing. This is the official unboxing. And who is in this wave? Well, first we have the Atom, and it's kind of cool that the Atom size. So we have Ray Palmer there, and then we also have, and I just love, that I'm holding a figure like this, Jay Garrick.
Yeah.
Golden Age Flash in Superpowers figure form. So, nice. Next figure here is, and this is, I think, a beautiful sculpt, beautiful, simple sculpt, Lobo. It's a really nice sculpt. Not a favorite character, but I appreciate the sculpt.
I hope Dap gets that.
Yep. And then there's always variants that they have in Chase figures, and this time This is one of the two Chase figures. This is Batman Unmasked. Sort of like the Bronze Age Batman in unmasked form. And then we also have the Death and Return of Superman, black suited Superman. Very nice figure. And then lastly, and this is, I think, wonderful. I think this is a beautiful sculpt. It's listed as Robin Jason Todd, but that's Dick Grayson to me, and that's Dick Grayson to me. I love this sculpt. Absolutely love this. And, just speaking of people, I certainly hope another friend of ours has this. I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
Yep. So, superpowers.
Happy clappy.
Yeah, it's just
Really cool.
and it's interesting. There's going to be Wave 12 coming out before Wave 11 because it's going to be an all Superman film, Superpowers Wave, and they certainly have the characters to fill.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the next wave. Yeah,
That's neat.
so first time I took those out. All right, we did so good on time. Wanted to get this under 2 hours, and we're at 1 hour and 55 minutes. So let's start wrapping up. And when we wrap up an episode of the Comic Book Bears, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar where we woof at something which may be a comic book or comic book related. It may be a film, it may be a TV program, may even be a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or potentially viewer may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
My Woof of the Week is actually a queer book club selection that we'll be reading for next month's Queer Book Club here in Winston-Salem, and that is Moby Dyke, an obsessive quest to track down the last remaining lesbian bars in America. It's by Krista Burton, who wrote a column called Effing Dykes for quite a long time. But in this book, she basically goes through, this is a travelogue, essentially, where she and her husband go to all the remaining, or most of all the remaining lesbian bars in America, all around the country. There are actually 2 in Oklahoma City, which is shocking, but gay bars have been disappearing for years, especially lesbian bars. But she goes there, she talks to the people there, she spends time and gets to know the communities. And it's just a really fascinating read and a really cool insight into the post-COVID era queer communities. Because it was written right after everything opened up, after the vaccines were available. So definitely recommend it. It's a really cool read. Lots of great moments, great sense of humor. Just really fun.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your Woof of the Week?
So I'm going to pull a twofer, right? So my first Woof of the Week goes out to a little bit of a charitable initiative that actually happened this past weekend. My husband's lifelong best friend, our former roommate, who is now a therapist, she owns her own counseling firm. She teamed up with a local to Arkansas, it's up in Fayetteville, a tattoo parlor with a friend of hers. The tattoo parlor is called Ink Therapy, and they held a fundraiser to help raise money to a scholarship that my friend Priscilla, the therapist, runs. And it's meant to go to kids who are going to go into careers like therapy or social work or counseling or things like that. So they held this, and basically the idea was they produced a couple of pages of flash, and it had, this is how much the tattoo will cost. And for the entire Saturday, everybody came in and, got a tattoo, and that money all went to funding this scholarship. And they raised, actually at the event itself, they raised $2,222 even. With donations and everything. When they counted up the money, it's now raised up to over $2,500 to go, to fund a kid getting some help, some help with tuition and school books and stuff like that, to go into a service that will help people. Ink, in a lot of ways, getting tattooed as therapy. I got one myself. It's on my forearm. I don't know if you can see it super well there. But also, while I was there, I went ahead and booked some more appointments and left 2 of my Tom of Finland books with her to figure out what we're going to do to finish out this sleeve. on March 1st. So I'm very excited that I'm going to have some Tom of Finland on my arm. The second one I want to mention too goes out, and Bill, I was only going to do that. That is so on the right. You have, as you're viewing this, is my friend Priscilla. On the left is the tattoo artist Lexi Lee, who's also a trans artist. So very amazing, very talented person, but also is trans in Arkansas and a business owner and doing fantastic things, and has made a tattoo shop that is a queer space, and I love it. Like, it's one of my favorite. Like, I love going and just hanging out there when I go, because I've gotten to know some of the artists and stuff too. But Bill, because I know what your wolf is, I felt comfortable going ahead and doing another one. I want to give a shout out to our friend Wendy Freeman. Wendy released a new Wendy has a new music project right now. You know, she's the drummer for a band called Sunny Veneer there in Chicago, but she did her own solo thing. She's gotten really into kind of electronic sound and doing producing stuff. Well, she just released a new I'm not sure if it's going to be a whole album, but the newest song is called Marital Streep, Violent by Consent. That's her new project, and it just hit Bandcamp. It's great. I bought it. I downloaded it. It's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I want to read what one person, the review that they left. This is a must fan for this is a must for fans of underground electro. It's interesting synth pop with the driving industrial percussion that's overlaid with super raw lo-fi vocals that remind this poster of an interesting mix of the Deadites early recording with a dash of Nico Chase and a hint of Le Tigre. Marital Streep is the audible equivalent of your favorite black and white comic adaptation of your favorite B movie created by a woman who understands every bit of the recipe inside and out. That is the perfect review.
Yeah.
For it, like it both describes the music and just is on point for Wendy. So Wendy, congratulations from all of us. I love it. I've listened to it off of Bandcamp several times now. Keep going. Keep making more, because it makes me happy.
The thing I love about it is you can tell from the recording how much fun Wendy is having.
Yes, she
doing this, and that to me is the thing that gives me the biggest smile.
And Bill and I,
time of her life making this.
Bill and I actually got some insight into the behind the scenes into the making of this. Like, we got samples, and she sent us things to listen
throughout the
to.
process.
Yeah. So we were like listening to the process as we've done, and that was a pleasure and a privilege. And I want to thank her for sharing that experience with us. It's the closest thing I've ever had to been to like functionally seeing a record being produced, and I really appreciate that. So again, it's amazing. Go listen to it. Congratulations.
Through our socials, we should put the link up. I'm sorry I didn't think of that before. Okay, so my woof of the week goes to this gentleman, if I will cue Steve, and this is Chris Kluwe. He is a former punter with the Vikings, and you're not in an alternate reality. Yes, it is a cheesehead giving his wolf of the week to one of the Vikings. But Chris Kluwe has long been an excellent ally to the LGBTQAI plus community. If you see on my descriptive here, I'm listed as a beautifully unique sparkle pony, and that has a direct alignment to some of Chris's past work. And he is in the news right now because he was arrested yesterday when he went in front of the council in his home city of Huntington Beach, California, a very red enclave in that area. And the town council, even though this was effectively rejected by the voting populace, are going to erect a plaque in the local library that is MAGA centric. And Chris said, you really shouldn't be doing this. And he did it in a beautifully abrasive fashion, ending his speech saying MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced the swastika with a red hat, but that is what it is. And then he attempted to engage in the time-honored American tradition of peaceful civil disobedience and was promptly arrested. They figured out the charges later, but it is nice to see a voice that is this intelligent and sharp and making a move that put him in the news. And we all know that half the country is in line with him. And with everything going so crazy right now, it's nice to see these little blows against the empire. And hopefully they become bigger blows. So, Chris, thank you. I've always dug the guy. And I also love his ripple effect. You know, his book from 2013 is #1 on 4 different Amazon charts right now.
Oh, wow.
So it's good to see that kind of exposure in an organic sense, you know, provide a bigger voice to someone who needs to be heard. So that's my wolf of the week. A little serious, but
it's so like
beautifully
this conversation has, I've had several conversations about it today, just because it crosses over with my day job so much. Like I train on moments like this. I teach CLEs on it and stuff, and so it's very interesting to how this plays into like the Supreme Court's public forum doctrine and stuff like that. So it's a fascinating area of law, and it was interesting. Like I think he knew exactly what he was setting himself up to do. He again, just a very smart individual.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up now. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on most of the social media sites as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And if you want to view us, you can do so on our YouTube channel. If you've joined us tonight through Facebook Live, thank you. And as always, in any of these sites, please leave us a good review and like and subscribe. So until next time, which will probably be in 2 weeks, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a wolf and an explosion. And then after that, a little marital streep. And we'll be back very soon. Take care, everyone.
Wolf.